Davy. I'm awesome. And welcome to Davy's Awesome Movies, where I review the styles of movies that love the alternative, B-rated, cult-style flicks. And continuing this Halloween theme of Universal Monsters, we're going to the next in the Universal Monster list. The one that came out after Dracula and surpassed it in popularity. It was made the same year, though, in 1931. And it was directed by James Whale, and written by Garrett Fort, Francis Edward Farrago, Robert Florey, John Russell, and Richard Schayer, based on the book Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, and the play Frankenstein by Peggy Webling, and John L. Boulderston, and produced by Carl Lamy Jr., made and distributed by Universal Pictures. Ladies and gentlemen, the original Frankenstein. The movie opens the way the original Dracula ended, with a word of warning to the audience watching, saying that this movie could thrill you, or
it may shock you. It might even horrify you.
It may also cause you to want snacks during the movie. If you are diabetic, those snacks could send you into a diabetic coma, and you may have your foot amputated.
Well, we've warned you.
Apparently, though, in 1931, this movie did frighten a lot of people. So, the warning was justified, I guess. In 2022, I don't think this would frighten my 3-year-old. But I will say this. As far as a word of warning to the audience, my brother and I could have used this guy back when we first saw the movie Steel. Ugh. I hate you, Shaq. I still get nightmares from that! It's hammer time. Then we go to a funeral where scientist Henry Frankenstein and his hunchback assistant Fritz are waiting for everybody to leave. Henry Frankenstein is played by Colin Clive, whereas Fritz is played by Dwight Fry, the guy who played Renfield in Dracula. Once everyone leaves, Frankenstein and Fritz dig up that dead person.
Here he comes!
Taking grave robbing to a whole new level. Then they pass a guy who's just hanging around.
Climb up and cut the rope.
They have some parts for the body of this person they are making, but they still need a brain.
Here we have one of the most perfect specimens of the human brain.
So Fritz goes to the college classroom of a Dr. Waldman, played by Edward Van Sloan, who played Van Helsing in Dracula.
And here the abnormal brain of the typical criminal.
I wonder which one Fritz is going to take. Everyone leaves the class, and Fritz, who totally wouldn't stand out, goes to take the brain. Guess you're going to have to take the one that's abby-normal. Then we see Henry Frankenstein's best friend Victor and his fiancée Elizabeth discussing of how worried they are about Henry. What you should be worried about is that they switched the names. In the book, Victor is Frankenstein's name, and Henry is his... I don't know if it's his best friend's name. I read the book once. It's kind of boring. Mary Shelley doesn't even tell you how the monster was made. But what they are worried about is how obsessed Frankenstein is with his work. Elizabeth is asking Victor to go check on him.
You know I'd go to the ends of the earth for you.
Spoken like a man who doesn't realize he's in the friend zone. But then Elizabeth decides she wants to go with him.
I'm coming with you.
But Elizabeth, you can't do that.
I must.
She must. They go to talk to Dr. Waldman about Frankenstein and how concerned they are. Dr. Waldman tells them about Frankenstein having these crazy notions of reanimating the dead. And because of this, he dropped out of the class to go work on his crazy experiments. They say they're going to go visit Frankenstein and ask Dr. Waldman to come with him, and he agrees. When they arrive at Frankenstein's...
Send them away!
Dude, you don't even know who's knocking. It could be DoorDash. Never mind. He's a scientist. He's smart. He knows not to order from DoorDash. Because more than likely, they're just going to steal your food.
You can't see him. Go away.
They're not giving up that easy.
Elizabeth, open the door!
Seriously, dude, don't piss off your fiancé. Frankenstein does eventually go down there to let Elizabeth, Victor, and Dr. Waldman in. But he still doesn't want them there. He asks them to just leave and trust him that he knows what he's doing. Victor says he can't trust him. He's gone crazy.
We'll see whether I'm crazy or not.
So, to prove that he's not crazy, he invites them upstairs. Aw, stairs. As soon as they get up there, he tells them how he put this human being together with parts from different bodies of other dead human beings. So, buddy, if you're attempting to prove that you're not crazy, this really isn't helping. So now that the lightning is finally coming, which is what Frankenstein has been waiting for, he lifts the body to a hole in the roof so that it will be struck by lightning. But the question is, did it work?
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Now everyone watching this should be inspired to go get a computer and make a supermodel. Weird Science was awesome.
Now I know what it feels like to be God!
This line was originally cut out of the original theatrical version. It was censored because people thought it was blasphemous. It was later re-added when they released this movie in the 80s. Then we cut to Victor and Elizabeth talking to Henry's father, Baron Frankenstein. Baron wants Henry to hurry up and marry Elizabeth, but they're telling him to be patient. Henry's doing his experiments, and they're very important. But Baron's not budging. He's saying what's most important is that Henry marries Elizabeth.
Henry must come home if I have to fetch him myself. No, Baron.
Henry, though, is still at his castle with Fritz and Dr. Waldman and his creation.
Mark my words, he will prove dangerous.
Waldman is not very confident in this experiment, especially when Dr. Waldman finds out that the brain in this creation is from his lab.
The brain that was stolen from my laboratory was a criminal brain.
Frickin' Fritz! But Frankenstein just brushes it off.
I believe in this monster, as you call it.
As they're talking, in comes the monster.
Sit down. Sit down.
Roll over. Play dead. Beg. The monster is, of course, played by the legendary Boris Karloff. Bela Lugosi hated him. Frankenstein shows the monster light for the very first time, and the monster makes it clear it's good! But after Fritz comes in...
Frankenstein, where is it? Where is it? Ah!
Fritz doesn't like the monster. I myself am undecided. I'm a bit iffy on the monster. I don't know why, though. I mean, off the top of my head, it falls flat.
Get away with that torch!
The monster doesn't like fire. They finally subdue the monster and put it in a cellar.
Quiet!
I wonder if that's going to come back to haunt you later.
Oh, come away, Fritz. Leave it alone.
You should take his advice. But instead of taking Frankenstein's advice and leaving the monster alone, Fritz taunts it with fire. Fritz seems like that kind of guy who throws rocks at bears or looks at a wolf and goes, you know, basically the kind of guy that's just asking to live a short life. Gee, wonder what happened. It's my fault. Fritz asked me what he should do about his frustrations with that monster, and I told him to hang in there.
He hated Fritz. Fritz always tormented him.
Yeah, Fritz also used to bob for piranha. The monster is still freaking out, so Frankenstein and Dr. Waldman are convinced that they need to kill the monster. It's a failed experiment. So they start by giving it a sedative. Sedative! Victor knocks and tells them that Elizabeth and Baron are coming, so they have to move that monster quickly. Too bad Fritz isn't here. He could be like, quickly, Fritz, quickly.
We don't care if you get it.
When Elizabeth comes in,
Elizabeth.
he falls for her. Baron says he's going to take Henry home. Dr. Waldman assures Henry he'll take care of the monster.
You'll soon feel better when you get out of here.
You certainly will. These castles are so drafty. Dr. Waldman decides he's going to dissect the monster. Did it not occur to you that before dissecting the monster, maybe you should kill it or at least strap it down? Back to Henry. He's about to have a wedding. Or a hanging. Either way, we all have a little fun, huh?
Oh, it's a young Frankenstein.
He saw the future! The entire town is coming out and excited for the wedding. Which I guess is just something they used to do in Germany when rich people got married. Was the crowd all expected to get them wedding presents? Because if I was a peasant back then, I'd been like, screw this! You're rich, you're getting married, I'm poor. Buy your own frickin' presents. Keep your thank you note. As far as me saying this is in Germany, They never actually confirm that this is Germany. They just say it was like a make-believe land, but come on, dude. It's clearly Germany. Then we go to a little farmhouse.
Daddy, won't you stay and play with me a little while?
I'm too busy, darling.
Like a girl that age in this time would actually be playing around all day. She'd either be going to a factory to work to help support the family, or she'd be married. She goes over by the water to play by herself, and then she sees the monster.
Who are you? I'm Maria.
You'd think seeing a big freak monster like that would scare her. What am I talking about? My kids would just want to play with him too. Maria shows the monster her little game that she came up with of throwing flowers into the water to see if they will float. They run out of flowers and the monster wants to see if Maria will float. She doesn't. This was another scene they had cut out of the original theatrical release because audiences didn't like it. They thought it was too disturbing. It was added back in the 80s. Because by then, pretty much every audience was like, oh, dead kid. Meh. When she doesn't come up, the monster does realize this is bad. So he starts running. Sort of. At the wedding, Elizabeth is worried that Dr. Waldman isn't there.
He'll be here soon.
Probably not. Just then, Victor comes in with news that Dr. Waldman is dead.
He's in the house.
So maybe you all should leave the house. But instead, Henry goes looking for the monster and locks Elizabeth in that room to keep her safe. Of all the frickin' luck!
It's Elizabeth!
Better hurry, Henry! Elizabeth is okay. But they found Maria, who is not.
She's been murdered!
This was cut too. Basically, the audiences saw him playing with the little girl, and then it cut all of this, so they just had to put it together that he killed the little girl. But they never saw her get thrown in the water, and they never saw her dad carrying her dead body. Basically, it cut all the way to this.
Search every ravine, every crevice!
Let's go after it with the torches!
Take your torches and go!
Torches!
We don't care if you get it.
While they go looking, Henry Frankenstein gets separated from his group. Feel like a god now? The monster takes him to a windmill. Boris Karloff had to pick up and carry Colin Clive up into that windmill for 40 takes. After this movie, he had back problems for the rest of his life. And if that wasn't bad enough, he had to drag him up a ladder to the top floor of that windmill. And nowadays, people act like they're dedicated to their craft because they lost a few pounds. When Henry comes to, he tries to escape the monster. But he can't. He has nowhere to go. So he tries to fight it off. But he can't. It's too strong. But eventually the monster decides to just let him go. That looks so real. How'd they do that? But I will say this, at least for this take, they finally let Boris Karloff pick up a dummy. When Frankenstein falls, the villagers pick him up and take him to his home. Even though they should probably take him to a doctor, because I'm pretty sure that if he had survived that fall, he'd have a broken back, broken ribs, a couple of other broken things. As far as the monster, of course, the monster hates fire, so it tries to get away. It doesn't, though. Later we cut to Henry in bed. It looks like he's going to be alright.
To the house of Frankenstein.
Just no more experiments. So there you have it. That's the classic Frankenstein. Whereas Dracula started the craze, this one really kicked it into high gear. Audiences liked Dracula, but for the longest time, Frankenstein was the favorite. It had a $262,000 budget, and during its first run in theaters, made $12 million. So it was a huge success. And it's made millions, maybe even billions by this time. Considering these movies are on sale every Halloween, not to mention all the merchandising and paraphernalia that follows them. The three biggest ones being Dracula, Frankenstein, and the Wolfman. Occasionally you get stuff like The Mummy, The Bride of Frankenstein, never see anything for the Invisible Man. Like I said, this movie quickly received great reviews, and very quickly had surpassed Dracula. At the time, they were just hoping it would meet the standards of Dracula. So studios were very happy with this, which led to them making more of these Universal monster movies. The iconic design of Frankenstein, though, with the green skin and the flat head, that was all the makeup artist, Jack P. Pierce. The monster itself looks absolutely nothing like it was described in the book from Mary Shelley. The closest we've had to an accurate Mary Shelley's description in a cinema would have been Robert De Niro in Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. But this is the one that most people associate with him. The green skin that they put on the cover of posters and later VHS and DVD boxes all came from Jack Pierce making his skin makeup a greenish-gray skin tone, which he actually didn't do because he envisioned him being green, but more because in the black and white filming he would come up more pale, which is what he was going for. He wanted him to look more dead. Kind of like how the sets of the original Munsters were actually pink so that they would look better in the black and white contrast. Originally, Bela Lugosi was supposed to play the monster, back when it was supposed to be directed by Robert Florey. Originally, the monster wasn't going to be completely mute. It was going to have a few lines, mostly grunting, that the studio didn't think really worked. Not to mention, as much as Bela Lugosi would later go on to complain and hate Boris Karloff for eventually playing the part over him, Bela Lugosi wasn't happy with this part at all. He felt like he was a classically trained actor, the monster should have more dialogue, more depth. They wanted more of a mindless, clueless, mute monster. So it was kind of a blessing in disguise for Bela Lugosi, because he didn't have to play the part. Especially because as much as I like Bela Lugosi and the classic actor he was, Boris Karloff did a great job of this. Wouldn't say he was the best Frankenstein ever. I'd have to go back to Robert De Niro. But he did do a great job of not only playing the monster, but helping it reach the iconic status it now has. As far as Frankenstein the scientist himself, it was decided to change his name from Victor, which his name was in the book and in the plays, to Henry, because they felt Henry was more friendly for American audiences. I don't know what they had against Victor, but, I know there was tension between us and Germany at the time, but his name was Frankenstein. You really don't think people picked up on that? Ultimately, among the Universal monster movies, I wouldn't say this one is my favorite, but I would say it is a very good one, and the legacy it built would go on for ages. For example, if it wasn't for this one, we might not have had my favorite Frankenstein movie, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Fantastic movie, but then again, this one is too. This one still holds up today. Nostalgia-wise, but still. So as far as that, if you haven't seen the original Universal monster movie of Frankenstein, I definitely recommend you go check it out, especially if you're a fan of nostalgia. So there you have it. That's my movie review this week. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and if you did, make sure to hit like, hit subscribe, hit that little bell so you get notifications for when I post new videos, and leave a comment. Tell me what you thought of the original Frankenstein. Tell me which of the Universal monsters was your favorite. Love you guys.